My name is Joanne Smith. I'm the founder of Girls for Gender Equity. My gender pronouns are she, her, hers. Thank you for having me in this space right now. When I think of this conversation being right on time, I think of the two officers who were just indicted for raping an 18-year-old girl in New York City. So many times we say the survivor's name or person who's been killed's name, but I'm gonna say these officers' name, Eddie Martin and Richard Hall. Officers who, still face these counts and still have to be convicted, but have walked upon us for centuries, right? Just a few weeks ago, another police officer was indicted on charges that he patronized a 15-year-old girl for prostitution. He made videos of her performing sex acts. And his name is Officer Raul Almeida, 40 years old, suspended without pay, stripped of his gun and badge after he was arrested in his home in the Bronx, right? So these are our neighbors as officers who are predators on our young girls. And, I will unfortunately say the name of Kiwi Herring, who was married, transgender woman who had complained of threats of harassment in her family, and she's 30 years old and was killed and shot by a police officer in St. Louis, Missouri, right? So even when you call for help and pleas of domestic violence, women and girls know that the fear of officers is looming. And so our panel today and our esteemed panelists will jump in. I'm just getting my words in now because it'll be clear that I need to step back and we need to listen to this esteemed panelists. That we are going to focus on girls of color, on Black girls, on trans youth. So many times these conversations about over-policing and institutional violence don't leave a lot of room, one, for women and girls, we know that, but for girls under 24 years old, right? For the third grader who's being handcuffed, right, because she's having a tantrum in class, and who's criminalized in middle school because she's got bobby pins in her hair and has to take them all out while going through scanning. The adolescent girl who, from the time she's walking, even in her house and deciding what to wear to school, is being policed about a wardrobe, through her community, past the guy standing at the bodega, and then again facing that scanning in school, right? And the day hasn't even started yet. We're also going to focus on the institution of course, schools, where our young people spend so much of their time. And so I want to frame that so that we hold that, because so many times it's hard enough, right, to be able to provide space and make space within this racial justice movement to hold women, to hold our trans siblings. But then when we get to youth, it gets even harder. And when we get to youth of color, girls of color, Black girls, even harder. And so I ask that you hold that with me. And so I invite my esteemed panelists and colleagues who've done, work with throughout New York City for years to introduce themselves and really let us know in a couple minutes, 2-3 minutes, how you enter this conversation, right? Your name, your gender pronoun, how you enter this conversation. And we'll just go ahead down the line.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, my name is Cedra Sebastien. I am the Associate Executive Director of the Brotherhood Sister Soul. We are a youth organization about 20 blocks north of here, serving young people of all genders. And it's wonderful to be in this space, to talk, to share, and to also hear feedback from folks in the room, and to be here alongside a wise young woman I get to learn from all the time, and I'll let her introduce herself. And for me, I enter in this space as being a young person who was the loud girl that always had something to say, that got pinched by her third grade teacher on a regular basis because she thought that her pinching me was somehow going to silence me or get me to get my act together, and it did not. But nobody challenged her around the pinching. And I never forgot that, and I never forgot that. And I was like, if I'm ever in a space where I get to educate young people, I'm never gonna pinch them. I'm never gonna punish them for being vocal. I'm never gonna shush them. I won't say shh to get my classroom's attention. And thinking about how those are ways in schools that we're police, but I was also very clear that she was picking on me, not just because I was always talking, but because I was Black, because I was one of the darker skinned girls in the classroom, and because I would not be quiet. And so her way of trying to like curtail that was to do the pinching, right? So not hitting me, not putting me out the room, not being violent on her terms, but absolutely being 100% violent. And I think about situations where the young people that come to our organization that I see in my neighborhood, in Brooklyn and in Harlem, are punished and policed at a young age before they even have an interaction with the police officer.
That's right.
Peace, y'all. My name is Firdaws. I'm a youth member of the Brotherhood Sister Soul, part for 2 years, and I enter this space on the opposite end of the spectrum. So I'm like the woman or the young girl who was silenced, whose voice was taken away because I saw all these things happening to girls who look like me. So I was, in some ways, like a model example, and I guess for teachers, because I was like always silent because I was scared of what would happen if I did speak up. And since this happened for so long, I forgot I had a voice altogether. So when it came time to speak about anything I was going through, any trauma, I didn't know how. So it's a shame that I never experienced being vocal about my oppression, but you know, I'm getting there. And you know, with attending this panel and I guess being more vocal, it's a journey, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And yeah.
Yes, 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 yes. Yes.
Hey y'all, yes, best friend in the front row. My name is Miaija Jawara. I am a sophomore now in college, and I've been a youth leader at the Urban Youth Collaborative since my sophomore year of high school. And I would just like to put this out now, because after hearing what Joanne was saying and hearing from you and both of you, I just have to say that I think there is no one more that I trust in this world than Black women. Like, I trust y'all with my life. I've seen it. I've trusted y'all since I was in high school. I trust y'all on college campuses. I trust y'all in the club. I trust y'all in the street. I trust y'all. Even if I don't know you, I trust you. Because I've seen it that no one fights for us. Even if I'm a stranger, no one fights for us, and no one looks out for us, and no one protects us the way that we do. You know, like, we find value in our lives, and we fight for each other. And the way that I came into my work is that I remember so the quote, you know, like, history is always written by the oppressors or like the winner, right? And I feel like if we're not speaking up, if Black women, if we're not speaking up for ourselves, I feel like we're going to but our history is going to be written right out of the books. You know, so if we're not speaking up for us, then who is? So that's why I'm in the work that I am now.
Yes.
Let's go. Right.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Octavia Lewis. I am a trans activist and advocate. My pronouns are she and her. I am in this space for all the trans women that are involved with survival sex work, for those that are formerly incarcerated, for those that are marginally housed, for those that are homeless, and for those that do not have a voice. I am aware of my privilege even when I come into spaces like this. I am aware that, again, the intersectionalities that coexist with my cis sisters are not always the same as mine. So again, I am aware of that, and I am here to be an accomplice and not an ally, because an ally has nothing to lose. But what I am saying to you is, we are not here to replace you because you are irreplaceable. I am here to stand beside you in this struggle because our liberation are entwined with one another.
See? So thinking about all of the rich experiences that you all share and how you enter this work, how have you seen girls of color policed as you define policing of girls of color, Black girls?
I'll take this one first, I guess. So I have a friend who we're the same age, and basically she is on the bridge of being expelled from high school, high school in general. She just has like one more strike left, and it's because she is seen as too loud, similar to what Cedra said. And it's for little things that she does. So if she gets up, goes to the bathroom without asking for permission, she gets written up. So these little things, and if her white counterpart was to do the same thing, it would not be a problem. And it's because Black women have this narrative and stigma that we are like aggressive and always like resistant and trying to like do something, or like we always have the most attitude for no reason. When in reality, if she's going through life, like home in itself is an oppressive state. The world is oppressive, and then you're going to school where you spend most of your day, and it's also oppressive. So by meeting that with violence and more brutality, obviously she's gonna react to it with more resistance, with more pushback. So if she had things like the Harriet Apothecary that we had this morning, it wouldn't be a problem, you know, as opposed to like abusing her for dealing with her trauma, you know. If they just made her better, if they helped her like shed what she was holding on to, as opposed to like meeting it with like brutality. So I feel like in terms of that policing in schools, it's prevalent, it's everywhere, I feel like, yeah.
Have folks in the audience experienced that, over-policing in schools? Yeah. So actually, if you can you raise your hand if you have know of someone who has experienced over-policing of girls of color in schools? So that's the majority of the audience in here. Okay.
And to add to that, just want to pull out, so the example that Firdaws gave of her friend, that's an example of somebody whose name we don't know, right? We don't know who her friend is. But a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, does anybody recall the incident that took place in Spring Valley High in South Carolina? Mm-hmm. Okay, so this was an example that went viral of this young woman about Firdaws' age, Shakara, who was sitting in class, from what the video shows, not acquiescing to a request of a teacher in the front of the room, but still sitting in class silently. And seconds later, a white SRO comes in, slams her out of her chair, and then drags her out of the classroom while her teacher stands there watching it, doing nothing. Classmates are visibly shut down, some with their head down, some filming what is going on, and another classmate, Nia Kenny, standing up shortly after and saying, "I can't believe you let this happen," to the teacher, and shouting at the other classmates of like, "This was wrong. This shouldn't have happened to her. We should have helped her. What's going on?" She was then removed from the classroom. And both of them were actually put up on charges that were in place in the state of South Carolina, something to the line of disrupting schools. So there was a law in place that if you are brought up on that charge, you can be expelled. But disrupting your school or disrupting your classroom could range from not listening to your teacher to throwing a desk or a table. So from something very minor, to your point, right, to an extreme case, but it was up to the teacher or the dean or the principal to decide whether or not you were violating that law. And so both of them were removed from the school and basically had to fight for their education, right? The young woman who was further traumatized, being traumatized again, and a young person standing up to have somebody's back. She didn't even know her because she had just gotten to the school. But she was like, that's not going to happen to this Black girl in this moment with me in this room. She was expelled for standing up, right? And we have examples of that, people standing up and then getting shut down. So this is happening in a school setting. And the law was against them. And there were even mixed responses from other peers in the school of people who were like, well, this person who y'all are saying did that to her, well, maybe he did that, but he's like a father to me. He's the coach for this team. He always has my back, right? And it's like, yeah, that can exist. He can be a great person and a coach to you, and also be the person who, for no reason, flipped this young woman out of her chair and dragged her out of the classroom like she was not a human being, right? So that can exist in one person, right? So let's not get that twisted. So that happens, and for a year they are battling for their education. And Nia has had opted out to take general equivalency exam to get her high school diploma. Shakara went off to another school to finish out her high school career, but that person is still teaching at the school. Right? So that's how these two lives of these two black girls were disrupted, but also the trauma that other people had to experience in the classroom in that moment. So again, definitely a policing situation, not with a police officer in the community, but a school is not a place that students think they have to face that until they face that. And oftentimes, who faces experiences like that are young people of color, and what gets overlooked is when it happens to black girls, black trans youth, and gender nonconforming youth of color. That's when we overlook it. That's when it doesn't become primetime attention unless it's videotaped, and then it goes viral in the case of Shakara's incident.
That's right. I'm so glad you added the layers to that, because these young people, they don't stand alone, right? So we know that also then the family is impacted. So just knowing then how Naya's mother had to leave work, go into court. Court costs, right? So to defend yourself, it costs. So needing to get money, find money to be able to support the lawyer, being able to show up in other institutions like church and whatever she is connected with, and having to there then defend her daughter, right, who has been arrested for standing with this young person, and then to combat the actual laws in South Carolina. So it's extremely layered. Young person Shakara was in foster care, right? So that's another institution and intertwined with the educational system, and then really giving back to her mom. So she has yet to finish school, quite honestly. Then you think about the psychological effects. So I add that because, within community, within school, when we address school pushout, so many people are impacted, from the siblings, to the parents, to the housing situation, to the employment situation, to whatever other institution that you're in. And so I invite Miaija to add, how else do you see girls of color, black girls, trans youth, police?
So I've seen this police not only in schools, but sometimes, not even sometimes, but it seems like more often just for existing, really. I see it in, as I said, in schools, I see it in jobs, I see it competing for internships. I just see it everywhere. I see it a lot on my own campus. My school, it was not always as diverse as it is now. This school year is it's been said from, we've heard it from the president and administration, this is the most diverse population that the school has had. And I guess not everyone is really happy about this. There's been a lot of really nasty, disgusting behavior from a lot of my peers on my own campus, and it seems like the school, not the school, but also security, the people who are supposed to be protecting us, same thing with the police, they're supposed to be protecting us and they don't seem to care either. I feel like we're just in this game, I feel like everyone else is just playing this game, and I'm just lost to it. Everyone just playing this game of how can we get them out, how can we get them out, and we're all here just trying to defend ourselves. I don't understand, I'm supposed to be here, why are you trying to push me off of my own campus? I feel like it happens all the time. We get into these spaces and we're just pushed out for and I can't even comprehend why.
For me, I had to change the way I looked at the situation. Far too often, I hear people say the system is broken. No, darling, the system is working the way it's supposed to be. When the system was never created, designed, or implemented with girls like you in mind, then it is not going to work. That's right. And for me, I have taken the stance that I am not going to be that one that is going to, again, spend time trying to dismantle a system that is working fine. What I am trying to do, along with other trans women of color, particularly black trans women, is to create our own affirming systems. And what that looks like for us is when a young trans woman comes out, we believe her. Yeah. We affirm her. We oftentimes try to help her with the accessories so that she can feel comfortable showing up in school. Because again, as I stated before, when we talk about push out, a lot of us haven't even shown up yet. And I think we don't have that conversation when it comes down to talking about our young trans sisters. And again, that is oftentimes happens because we get caught up in the oppression Olympics and saying, well, if I'm a oppressed girl, I can't help you because I got to get through my own shit. And I get that. And again, it is not for me or anyone else to layer that upon anyone else, but to look at it and say, well, wait, these are our commonalities. How can we get over this hurdle? And I think we have been taught or conditioned to, again, pick out the differences instead of embrace what our similarities are. And again, that is the way the system has been created, to divide and conquer. And again, the system is working just the way it is supposed to. And again, we have to hold ourselves accountable when we show up into these spaces, when we talk about what can we do. What can you do is, again, when you see those young cis and trans women, affirm them. Because again, you don't know, or some of you may know, what they had to go through to get to that institution of higher learning. Some of them are coming from what we used to call back in the day latchkey homes. Yeah. Some of them are coming from homes where they gotta be the provider. Some of them are coming from homes where they don't even know where their next meal is gonna come from. Yeah. So again, I think when we are aware of those instances of what is going on with our young women, that we have to bridge or stand in the gap to say, well, you know what, sister, I'm not gonna let you fall between the cracks. And that may be as simple as offering someone a bottle of water. That may be as simple as saying, well, sister, how are you doing today? Yeah. That may be as simple as saying, sister, I love your kinky hair. Or sister, I love your broad nose. Those are things in which we can do to combat those issues of policing. It's by telling these young women, telling our young women, everything in which you have been told that has been demonized or sexualized, is that you are beautiful for that. Thick thighs save lives. So that's what we have to remember. So again, it is about embracing our young women and changing the way we ourselves are complicit with the way policing is happening in our institutions.
Did you have an addition?
Yes, I was just saying yes, Octavia. Just thank you, like, yes, because especially when you say the thick thighs save lives part, because I feel, so I developed ahead of my peers, like, much earlier than the rest did, right? And I felt like one of the things in the classroom I was always just singled out about was the way my body was developing, and it just took me just until recent to be like, listen, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. And this is, when I walk into a room, this shouldn't be the first thing or the only thing you see, because there's so, like, listen, there's booty, but there's brains, you know? Like, I'm trying to talk to you, not hypnotize you. Come on. Like,
So how are girls intervening, right? So Miaija, you had mentioned, showing up for Black women, especially in the street.
Yes.
When you need to intervene.
yes, all the times. Like I said, I see Black women and I swear I know them. I don't care if I met you, like, I'm from New York City, but I could travel to, like, Kentucky or Ohio or Wyoming and see another Black girl. I'm like, oh, I know her. Yes, my sis. Nah, I love your hair. I know you. Yeah. And the reason why is because, like I said, no one's looking out for us the way that we look out for us. Yeah. I remember, so freshman year of college is always wild. Always wild. God, what a wild time. And I remember I was at this party, and for some reason I had just lost my friends, and I wasn't under the influence or anything, but I was just in a space that I wasn't familiar with, in a house with people I didn't know, and I go to, like, a PWI. I see only one other woman of color in this house, and I run to her. I'm like, sis. She's like, hi, who are you? I'm like, I'm your sis. I need your help right now. And the reason why I do that is because I know that no one else is gonna come up to you, like, just randomly come up to you, like, oh my God, I love your hoops. Where'd you get this? This first, sis? Like, I just feel like this affirmation that you were saying about earlier is very important, because sometimes it'll turn one affirmation from just a random person, it'll turn a bad day into a good day. It'll give you that motivation to go on. And not only that, but it's reaffirming that we are here for each other. Like, I don't even have to know you, but I'm gonna let you know, like, sis, your fro right here with the white thing on your shirt, I've been staring at it this entire time. I love it. Like, things like that. Like, I don't know you, but I feel like I know you just from your hair, from your presence, your demeanor. I know that there are some things that the two of us could probably talk about and we'll relate, you know? And you may be walking down the street, and I could just tell by your demeanor that you just need a little bit of magic in your life, you know? So show up for us just in just that one simple way. It doesn't have to always be big and dramatic and be a campaign and a hashtag. Sometimes just you walking past me at the right time of the day.
That's right. On a day-to-day scene. see black girls, see girls of color on a day-to-day. Firdaws, how have you interrupted police violence?
Similar to Miaija, just being there for them. So like, when women of color, girls of color, black girls, black youth, we're made fun of for our hair, our skin tone, our bodies, everything. So just talking like, oh, I like your Bantu knots, actually knowing that those are Bantu knots. It's like just that common, right? It's like that common thread, and then you have a beautiful friendship. You have someone to hold you down. You have someone who relates to you. Just being there, affirming their blackness, like you said. And I also think that starts within yourself. So before I can like love someone, be there for someone, I have to be there for myself, know that I deserve love, and then I'm gonna be able to give that to someone else. I'm gonna be able to be there for that other person. So there are many ways in which I can like intervene, but like I feel like there's two ways I mostly do it. Being there for myself, like I said, and then like reciprocating that through affirming and compliments and asking someone, how's your day? Like genuinely, like how is your day? How are you doing? As opposed to like, just like a nod, even a nod, but like a genuine, like I care about you, I'm here for you, I know, and just being there for them, yeah.
And what I love about doing that also is that it completely, when two, like if I were to come to you in the street and we like, oh, I affirm you, when two people, when they witness that interaction, it completely shatters this idea that black girls are angry and we're we're in competition with one another and we can't stand to be around each other, because that's a lie.
That's a lie, definitely.
I love having all my friends come to my house and we just talk and we cook and we talk and we heal and we love, and it's a beautiful thing when black women get in a room together.
And we're loud too,
Yes.
which is we'll see each other from like two different triggers. And everyone will love it though, and that's just who we are, and it's amazing.
And it completely, like, I love doing that. I go to the cafe, the D hall, they hate me in there, because me and my sister, we come in.
They hate you.
Yes! We come in formation, all of us. We just like,
As you
hello.
should, yeah.
See? And then being able to do that, just very unapologetic.
Unapologetic,
Like, I feel
yes.
so natural right now. I think I'm just talking like, I just met you?
We just met 2
Like-
seconds ago. Look at this. Like,
Don't tell me black girls are angry. We just a bunch of
honestly,
goofballs.
we're just happy, yeah. It's fun.
Come through.
Thank you for blessing all of us with your joy. And so introducing into the conversation, thinking about even the policing of young mothers within health institutions, right? Within every institution. I have a colleague, Sherazad Tillett, and she leads a long walk home, and the one thing she says is when you work with black girls, it means that every single institution needs to change, right? And so I want to introduce the health system and young motherhood, because Octavia is about to take us there.
It is 2017, but an article came out last year that stated that medical providers do not give black children the same amount of pain medication if they give non-ethnic children. To know that that is still being done, that we are still being mishandled and mistreated within the healthcare system pisses me the fuck off.
Yeah.
It is observed that not too long ago, black women, uterus were cut from their bodies without pain medication, that their vaginas were probed and prodded because they were thought to be able to handle that type of mistreatment and maltreatment because they were black. And to know today that we are still being faced with those maltreatments and those mistreatments pisses me the fuck off. And why I'm pissed off is because we are not experiments. Why I'm pissed off? Because we are loved. Why I'm pissed off is because we are brilliant. Why I am pissed off is because without black women and their struggles, many other women would not even be able to occupy this space. So yes, I am pissed off when I hear, even in 2016, that they are still not giving our children the medication that they deserve, and that our children are still suffering at the hands in which we are supposed to be the greatest nation in the world. How can we be that when we allow our children to suffer? How can we be that when now we're faced with an opioid epidemic, and now all of a sudden we are in a crisis? But what happened when Cassandra and Lucille were strung out on crack and cocaine, and she was locked up and given a mandatory 10-year sentence? Then when she got out, she couldn't return to the projects, nor could she get food stamps or Medicaid because she was a convicted felony. Now all of a sudden, it is an illness. It is a sickness. We must help them. Well, where the fuck was our help? The CIA, the former CIA director, made a statement on news about 2 weeks ago that it is an epidemic and that the pharmaceutical companies are responsible for the epidemic that is going on. So if you had the time to discover that, why the fuck can you discover who put crack and cocaine in our neighborhoods? Why couldn't you tell us how this shit was coming over here on boats and airplanes when none of my people owned none of that shit, because we were still taking MTA, we were still bombing rides to get to where we was going, but yet stuff was coming over here on ships and planes and shit. And excuse my French if my language is hurting your ears, but if it is, then good, because you need to be challenged. And if you don't leave here feeling some type of way, then you was only here to occupy space. So every time I go into a space and I'm left feeling some type of way, then I say to myself, well, damn, them were some dynamic speakers on that stage. So yes, we are here because we want you to get in your feelings. We want you to be uncomfortable. I even want some of your faces to turn red. Because then that'll let me know that, wait a minute, you have feelings too. That'll let me know that, wait a minute, what we said did not just go through you, but it resonated to you. So again, talking about the healthcare system, as a woman of trans experience, it has fucked me royally. But I did not succumb to the enemy. I have been one of those that have been very boisterous for my trans sisters, and even my cis sisters said, no, you are not going to treat us like this. No, when I show up, no, I'm not angry, I'm aware. No, I am not bitter, I am better. So no, I am not giving you attitude, but I'm letting you know what I'm not here to accept. So when we see young girls that are there and they may be perceived as having an attitude, don't ask them, well, damn, why they got an attitude? You should be asking them, well, damn it, we all should have an attitude, because we see what the system is doing to us. And if we don't say anything, then we are just as complacent as the ones that are doing the misjustice. So that is what I have to say on the healthcare system.
That's right.
That's right. Y'all could tweet Octavia Lewis. Policing pain, right? So just what you were talking about, the policing of medication. Just think about yourself. Think about children in your family, children of your own. I was like running through my nieces and nephews in times that like they had to go 3 times, right, back, because the same symptoms kept coming back, and this didn't work and that didn't work, and wondering like, was it because of that first time, right? They weren't believed or, taken seriously, and knowing and believing, yes, that policing of pain happens to us, happens to them all the time. So I thank you for introducing that. I thank you for introducing the opiate epidemic, because the foster care system is currently shifting because of this. The same fucked up foster care system is shifting because so many white children are going into that system, right? And in naming these institutions, both you, Cedra, Miaija, Firdaws, have worked to shift those systems within New York City, and intentionally, right? So going into the belly of the beast, working with city government, working with hospitals, working with other practitioners and with young people, and doing so with love, with anger, with pain, when you're tired, when you have all the energy in the world, and getting some pretty big wins, but also still knowing this fight is lifelong. Can y'all talk about some of the things that have worked and some of the things that you have shifted?
Oh,
Yes.
and one thing that's also a pet peeve of mine is shaming our young girls for their periods. Can we please get over that shit? And can we please start holding these big tampon makers accountable for still using a derivative of rat poison in tampons that is causing our black girls to have toxic shock? That shit is serious, and it is real, and it is killing, and it is fucking up our girls. And that is another way for me in which the system is almost still practicing eugenics on our girls, because that is messing up our women. So please, stop shaming young girls when they show up and they don't have pads to change like other young women. Be that beacon of hope that you can say, well, girl, I get it. Here's a pad. Like, stop. We have to stop shaming our young women on something that is natural. That is something that is going to happen. It is a part of life. And when I am in schools and I see that there are not enough sanitary napkins for young girls, that pisses me off. Because that should be a given. Like, no one should have to walk around with a pad on for several hours in their own blood. Like, this is 2017. We got to start holding these institutions accountable. And that is one of the things, again, and which is a pet peeve of mine, is shaming young girls for their cycles and not having the adequate means for them to take care of their cycles.
Octavia, you spilling a lot of tea.
Yeah.
Somebody got to do it.
They do. It's a hard job.
Could you repeat again? Can you just go back to the question again, the prompt that you gave us?
So thinking about the ways in which y'all deliberately have interrupted this. So even thinking about pads, I know that just recently in New York City, do you want to speak on?
Yeah, so, and, yeah, I'm enjoying the conversation too, and so that's why I need to refocus, because I'm like, I'm an audience member on the panel right now. And so Octavia and I met through this work, and Joanne and I, and I'm sure other folks in the room too, the Young Women's Initiative that was started about 2 years ago, and came through the work that Girls for Gender Equity, which Joanne is the executive director of, based in Brooklyn, really held this question of why do we have to wait in response to what came out with MBK? Why is it that girls of color need to wait for a similar platform to come out on a federal level to say that resources, support, aid from a federal level needs to come to support young women and girls, youth of trans and gender nonconforming experiences on that level, right? So not what was happening locally, community-based organization, but what was gonna be the federal response in the same way that My Brother's Keeper was a federal response to what was going on with Black boys and boys of color. And after not having that happen, coalescing a group of folks who were like, okay, what can we do with what we have and where we are? Not only write a letter that had like 1,000+ signatures on it, but also started thinking about what could we actually do to shift policies and implement practices in the city. And so New York City, that resulted in the Young Women's Initiative that looked at 5 different areas in the lives of girls of color, also having a focus on girls of trans experience and gender nonconforming youth, up through 24 years old, thinking about class and poverty, thinking about access in school, healthcare, what post-secondary opportunities were for them, how they would interact with the criminal justice system, and what impact that could have, right? And like what recommendations we could make for practices that needed to shift immediately or needed to shift over time. And Octavia was focusing on health, I was focusing on education, and that was a part of the interruption, right? And for me, the biggest part of the initiative was not just the 100 recommendations that we came up with, and you can look at online and see the progress of those recommendations actually rolling out, but the fact that we were doing it with young people. And so a lot of these initiatives and ideas and talks happen in the absence of the people who we're actually speaking about. So even being on this panel, like the joy that I feel being on the panel with the two of y'all is dope, but also just like leaning back and like hearing y'all laugh and watching y'all laugh and enjoying each other's time like fuels me and gives me a lot of like love and a lot of joy, as opposed to me like being like, I need joy. I just get to
In fact,
you know, and take it right there. And so the interruption was doing that work and doing that work alongside young people, alongside girls. And them not as like an afterthought, not like, look at what all the adults did and what do you think about it, but being in the same room, in the same space, giving feedback, over votes. At least in my group, they got 5 votes. If you were 21 and under, you got 5 votes, and everybody else got 1. But that was to make sure that there was not a balance, because that would not have been fair, but really figuring out how to elevate and multiply the feedback from the young people who were in the room, right? And so for me, that was a great interruption. I think another interruption is some other work that's happening on the city level, and Firdaws is a part of this if you want to speak to it. But she's a part of a program at BroSis called the Liberation Program, and they have a partnership now with NYCLU around collecting people's feedback around policing specifically, but other issues that we want for the mayor to respond to. And so we house this structure in our space where folks in the community could come to and leave their feedback on postcards about what the mayor needs to be doing differently, like right now. And not like, you know, it would be great if, but like, no, do this, because this is how this is impacting my families now, and it needs to shift and look like this. And so toward the end of the panel, we'll stick around and we have postcards to give out to folks to fill out, but that's something that we're collecting and looking to do, because we recognize that sometimes the feedback doesn't come from every space. So if you have access to a space like Barnard where you can come to this type of thing, then that's great. We're in a different space than other folks who live in Harlem, and you are in Harlem right now. I don't know what else they saying, but this is Harlem. So there are people in Harlem who do not have access to this space.
Yes.
And either because they cannot come onto this space, or they don't think they can come onto this space.
Yes.
So how is it that we're getting feedback from those people, right? And so that's what the project is for us. How do we get information and feedback from the people who are not going to go to City Hall for whatever reason, because they work 2 jobs, because they don't speak the language, because they don't have ID, whatever it is? How is it that we're then getting that information? And so that's a part of the interruption too. Not just taking the information or taking the call to people who are already a part of the choir, right? Like folks who are going to head nod and snap and, you know, all those kind of things that we do. But folks who are kind of like, I don't know what y'all talking about, but this is what's happening with me, right? How do we get it to those folks? And so that's a part of the interruption too, recognizing how it needs to go beyond spaces like this and hit other pockets of our community.
yeah,
That's right. Thank you, Susan.
that's real.
And to add on to that, the NYCLU project that we're working on in Liberation Program, it's a lot about meeting people where they're at. So a lot of times we're not given space, or people think that their stories are not, they don't matter, they're irrelevant, and they always feel like they're not articulate enough or they're not important enough, you know, and their stories are undervalued. So this Thursday that just passed, we had a community conversation, which is basically we invite people, because the headquarters of BroSis, Brotherhood, Sisterhood, is in a brownstone, in a local community. And we invited people from within the community to talk about their experiences with policing. And with that, they write down their experience, what they want. So a lot of feedback, or a lot of things that people want, is to divest in policing and like take out money, because the fund for NYPD is crazy ridiculous. And they want to see that money being invested into their kids, being invested into their community, their future. So with this feedback, we plan to go to de Blasio and give him like the tangible evidence that this is what your people want. You're the mayor, you are supposed to be serving them, and this is exactly what they need from you. So now it's up to you to help us get there, help these people reach their potential, make them comfortable in their own homes.
And Miaija, how will you interrupting policing? And then I'm going to invite the audience to share strategies and ways in which you're interrupting policing, share what's working, and any also campaigns you're working on across the board.
So far, what I've learned has been working the best, at least in my experience, is just resilience and not being afraid to say it as once, twice, 3 times. And what a great point that Cedra had brought up that I love what she said was that, when she was working with young people, it wasn't, here's what all the adults did, what do you think? Because I keep saying that is we got to believe in the babies, even though I low-key am one of the babies. Yeah. But I love it when I'm talking to like high school age kids, and they have like all these ideas, and they're part of all these movements, and they want to do all these things. And I'm just like, y'all are gonna do great things, and y'all are gonna put this movement. Well, it's already on the track, but like they're accelerating. I fumbled over my words. They're doing, they're part of this as well. They're
part of the momentum.
Yes, there we go. That's the word, momentum. They're part of this momentum. And so as the more that I see this, the more hope that I have that we, even though like I said, I feel like this is a battle that my mother's mother probably fought, not probably, but did fight. Absolutely. And I probably said a lot of the things that she said so many years ago, and I see these kids saying the same thing. So I see that. Not only do I see that this is continuing, but it's continuing with passion, as much passion, and they have even bigger and better ideas than even I did at their age. So I'm just really excited to see these high school folk go and break out into this world and do amazing things.
Octavia?
I'm going to step back and let the baby step up. So, yeah.
All right, so one of the ways in which, I'm not one of the babies, I'm one of the olders, but I do want to name some of the things that our babies are doing at Girls for Gender Equity. And one of the things that we are doing is coming out with a report on Schoolgirls Deserve. And this report was developed, and campaign was developed inclusive of 120 community members. Octavia, Cedra was there. Just to be clear, like Miaija, I know Miaija from her being a baby in high school, right? And Justine in the front, speaking truth to power at the White House, for the White House Council of Women and Girls, and shaping actually their whole White House Council of Women and Girls initiative on girls of color through the powerful testimony, and not just sharing their stories, but sharing then how you address advocacy. What are the solutions to the structural and institutional issues? So I just want to name that, sometimes this work seems like it has to happen when you're at a certain age, a certain stage, certain life cycle, but it's lifelong work. And as these young people speak truth to power in every single institution, that matters so much because it has a ripple effect. And that ripple effect is what allowed for the Young Women's Initiative to happen, not only here in New York City, and yield $20 million of resources, because we also need coins, right, to shift systems. And of the 100 recommendations, they were whittled to 88, and then over 40 of them have passed, right, have been implemented. So understand that these behind the scenes work is also being led by young people of color as they do this work. But with Schoolgirls Deserve, it's a participatory action research report that shares, not just what is happening with institutional violence and interpersonal violence in schools, but what are the solutions? What do our young people deserve out of the mouths and vision of our young people, right? Because, we know the problems so many times, and we also have the solutions. So pulling out those solutions and challenging our policymakers and day-to-day folks in the school system to step up to those solutions and apply those resources to those solutions. So November 8th, look out for that campaign to begin and report to begin. And then I turn it over to the audience. What are some things within your space, within your college campus, your institution, your community, that you're doing to interrupt policing of girls of color?
If there are any current Barnard students in this audience, I wanted to speak to what Miaija was saying about affirming each other, what you all were saying about affirming each other, but especially giving the people under you, underclassmen of you, their own voice. I fought a lot of institutional bullshit while I was here, and one of the things that I figured out, my mom is a Barnard alumna as well. I have sisters, both in the literal sense and also the figurative sense, who went here and graduated through here and fought the same battles that I did, that they're waiting for you to age out. That one of the things that happens is you fight and you fight for the 4 years you're here, and then you get that degree, and you leave. And the things that you were trying to change, maybe you got some of them accomplished, but the bigger fights don't push forward because they're waiting for you, the troublemaker, to edge out. And what I didn't do, and what I wish I did, was find the young women under me, younger than me, to continue that fight so that my daughter doesn't have to go to Barnard and fight the same fights that I did and that my mother did. And I think it's so important that when you're thinking about this work, you're thinking about, okay, these are the things that bothered me when I got here. These are the institutions that I'm fighting against, the prejudice that I'm fighting against. What will the girls after me need to add to this? And how can I show them that their voice is necessary in this fight as well? And making sure that they feel heard and making sure that they have leadership and can carry that fight on. Because it's unfair that we have to keep fighting, but we do. And I think we always have to remember that, when you're carrying this burden, one, share it because you don't need to carry a mountain by yourself, but two, share it so someone else can continue to carry that mountain when you don't have the same access anymore.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm a behavior management specialist working for a private nonprofit, GAG, I know. Aside from that, I'm a community organizer. And so what I'm currently doing is working in, I know on the previous panel they mentioned gentrification. And I think that's important. Thank you for mentioning that this is Harlem. And in here, what we're doing, I belong for, sorry, I also get nervous for public speaking, but I'm part of community, Justice Center in El Barrio. It's 116th and 116th and Park. And if you guys have noticed the petitions in the back for rezoning, that's a huge thing that we're doing right now. Is consuming us. And part of rezoning that comes along with that is policing. That's a huge tool that comes alongside of that. They use that to come for, it's racist, rezoning is racist, it's sexist. And so that's what we're really doing for that. So if you guys want to get involved, I'll be around for a couple more hours. And so thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tasha. I am a troublemaker.
Yes.
I am just so happy that I'm here. I want to shout out to the Skint, because that's how I found out about this conference. Because as far as my form of defense towards this policing, I've used art. And I've come to art in working for a nonprofit, and it mustered up something, like you said. You should feel something to have those feelings. And that is what usually invokes some type of reform or change, right? Yeah. And in listening to primarily what Octavia was saying, a lot of the things that you mentioned reminded me that, another defense is our own advocacy, our own voice, not silencing ourselves and bringing awareness to a lot of things that happened. And for me, having my own experiences, I've used art to talk about other people's experiences because those intersections affect us. For example, when you mentioned pain, one of my best friends has lupus, and she has talked about how, we have these illnesses that because there's no physical manifestation of the pain, we devalue what people are experiencing. Oh, you look so good. You know what I mean? Like, even my hat's upset. It's like, you look so good, you're not in pain, and we don't hear the cry. Yeah. Another friend of mine has endometriosis, and in her journey, having to wait 5 years to be properly diagnosed because she kept saying that her cramps were so, I was like, what are you talking about? But we've been taught that our cramps are supposed to feel a certain kind of way. And when we see our parents, our mothers having those severe cramps, we're like, oh, that becomes our normal, right? Whereas our normal isn't normal, and we have to reprogram ourselves to do that. So even though I don't have these experiences of my sister friends, it is my experience, right? And so using art as that, for me, has been a way to channel that. Another thing that you brought up about the period, how we shame our family, our friends for having their period, but also not talking about alternatives, you know? Just, okay, yeah, we have tampons and pads, but what about Diva cups, right? We don't talk about Diva cups and other holistic, eco-friendly options to our natural experiences. And I think that's something else that we can, I'm sorry, I wrote like mad notes. And I'm
No,
going to,
same
like,
old.
I'm gonna bring them all down. But I also work in the clinic setting of a nonprofit in Harlem, and a lot of our population are of African descent. And we don't talk about female genital mutilation, right? It becomes this thing that happens there, but what people don't know, it happens here in the United States. There's a black market for a continuation of practices that don't benefit women, right? So it's like broadening our scope that, yes, it's not something that we particularly live, but we're living it indirectly, and it affects all of us. So I wanted to bring that up.
We touched on the period and everything, but I want to know, how exactly do we create a safe space for Black girls to talk about sex and be sexually aware and be sexually liberated? Because there's many of us who've grown up, and we know a lot of girls that literally been kicked out of their homes, beat up by their parents for just having sex or even interacting with a male, period. And it's just really unsafe. Also creating a safe space for queer Black girls and queer Black boys as well, but mainly Black girls, because we don't talk about our bodies. We're always supposed to be ashamed of our bodies. We're highly hyper-sexualized all the goddamn time. So everywhere we go, it's like people are noticing, oh, you have big-ass titties. You know, you got big-ass hips, you have big-ass everything, but you don't know about your body. There's not a lot of Black girls that know, oh, hey, you don't pee out of your vagina, you pee out of your urethra. There's a lot of people that don't know that your period blood comes out of the same hole which penises and babies come out of and in, you know? Like, how do we let our younger sisters know, like, hey, it's okay that you feel this way about this person. It's okay that what you're feeling in your body is completely normal. Like, do not let your mother or your aunts or whatever tell you that you're fast for thinking that you want to have sex with this person. It's okay. There's a lot of people that my sister goes to school with, and she's a junior in high school, who have sex and they don't tell their parents, and she had, she had an STD because she didn't use protection, and she hid it from her mom. So things like that are really dangerous. These girls can really lose their lives for doing things like this, and it's unsafe. They don't know about consent. So how do we create a safe space to be like, okay, this is normal. You're cool. This is great.
Facts. As much as we're hypersexualized, we should at least be able to talk about sex every now and again.
So as Ed goes to the back, one thing, I want to name for folks who don't work with young people, right, who aren't practitioners and typically in the space with young people, this is why you need to be, right, because you learn so much. You come in here thinking that policing is just about, young people going to jail. But you learn then, right, the breadth of like what it feels like to be walking as a Black girl, as a girl of color, as a youth, as trans experience, as a gender nonconforming young person, as a lesbian, gay, bisexual young person, whose language is policed, whose reproductive autonomy is policed, whose how they look and clothes are policed, whose knowledge and pain is policed, right? Whose schedule is policed, housing, education. And then you start to understand how, as my sister said, we have to shift every single institution if we're ever truly going to shift the carceral state. when it comes to young people, and in particular girls of color?
So very quickly, I just want to affirm the sister up front. I'm also a Black Barnard alum and went through the same thing as an organizer on campus. I'd love to meet you at the end of this, but also if there are other current Barnard students, come meet us after this session because I will share with you exactly what we did when we were on this campus. So A. And B, I also just want to share my work. I'm a dancer and an artist, and I cannot impress enough about how important it is for us to dance and to take care of our bodies in the resilience in the face of this work. Even I'm someone who's, been taking ballet lessons since I was 4, but even if all you like to do is just stand up and shake and wiggle around, do that shit. Do it, because it gives you a sense of agency in a way that nobody can take from you. So I just want to tell everyone in this room to center your bodies. Every single day, center your body.
Thank you. That's why intergenerational work is so important. Thank you. Y'all meet us at the end.
Hi. I get nervous, so I wrote this down. So my name is Virginia Loperena. I'm a New Yorker, Puerto Rican. I work at Bank Street College of Education, just down the road. And I wanted to talk a little bit about big T, little t traumas that girls of color experience in school. It's a given at this point, unfortunately, that girls of color are going to experience trauma in school, whether they're in pre-K or they're in PhD. And I wanted to invite people to think about, as educators and people who work with girls, what we can do not only to acknowledge and hold space for girls who experience trauma in school, but to break down the notion of school as a carceral space.
Okay.
Because it's designed to get children acclimated to the idea of incarceration. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Inaya. I'm a student at Bard College, not Barnard. It's like 2 hours away from here. So I just wanted to go off the lines of what we're doing to kind of disrupt and fuck shit up, basically. So I, myself, as well as these other two lovely women sitting next to me, are a part of a group called Color Women United that we have on Bard's campus to basically fuck shit up. And every single year we host a conference called the Black Body Experience. And this year the theme is actually going to be about policing the bodies of Black and brown women and girls, which is going to be awesome. It's shameless plug. Probably I don't know. We should connect with some people in here to send you the information. Because our conference is awesome, and we go to a predominantly white institution where white liberalism is a disease. Honestly, it is a disease, and we just have to fuck shit up, and basically that's what we do with this conference. And so, yeah, definitely.
Hi, my name is Anya. I'm actually a freshman at Bard College. I just joined CWU. And I just wanted to kind of comment on, I wanted to thank you for the compliment about my hair. I went through a really long struggle with my hair. I didn't like it. I grew up, my mom's Puerto Rican, and her mom has straight hair, and she didn't know how to do her hair, so she straightened it, and my mom raised me to really love my hair, and I didn't get a chance to do that until my last couple of years of high school. And I was actually told to sit in the back so that some people wouldn't have to look over my hair, straighten my hair so that I could fit in more. And I sit in the front all the time, and I know the people behind me, and they deal with it. But I just wanted to kind of remind everybody that this whole concept of history tends to be something that we think of as so far in the past. And it's really not. We are not that far removed from slavery. We're living in an age of racism. And I think that it's something that's really important to remind ourselves, is that shouting out to each other and reaffirming each other is so important, because we are living in a space where it's still very confined and we don't have that kind of support. And if we're gonna have any support, we need to support each other instead of tearing each other down. And that was the first thing we made a vow at the beginning of the year, that we're not gonna tear any other women down, especially women of color, because we are important to each other and we have to be.
That's right. There you go.
Hi, I'm here with Sadie Nash. I have some of my students here. But something that I find really transformative in working with Sadie Nash that we do is when working with our young women, we try to teach we try to be conscious of the ways that young women are policed in their schools and homes, within our families, and in society in general. And with that in mind, we try to teach from an approach where we're non-punitive, and we think about ways to re-envision the way that we interact with young women in a way that's conscious of the ways that they're policed. So it could be as small as like not commenting on the ways that we're dressed. So we have like a policy where we don't talk about how like we come into the space, or like we don't acknowledge like how like young people like show up in the space in terms of like their appearance. Because it's like in many ways our bodies and our like experience is defined by the way that people see us and the way that people define us based off of our like appearance. So we try to create a space where we can redefine what that looks like. So it can go from there all the way to you know, like if someone is coming to class with their head down, like not you looking at it as like I'm disengaging, and instead looking at it as like constructive feedback as to like, is my class kind of boring? Or maybe, you know, you came into class and you're like experiencing something that might be outside of the space, and like what are ways that we can like be a support system to you? So like coming from a place of co-creation as opposed to like I'm, you know, the facilitator and you're the young person in the space has been like really helpful in the ways that we work with our young people. But then also to what you all are sharing around like realizing that we trust women, like, you know, realizing that like our relationships with other women of color have been like the most like impactful. We also realize that some of that isn't just like innate, it's like learned. So we try to create a space where like our young people can understand the value of like sisterhood and siblinghood with other like women of color and like genderqueer folk in the space who are also people of color. So like we teach under this thing called like a sisterhood/siblinghood model where we encourage that. But I think something that I want to learn more about as a youth worker is how to do that work while also being conscious of the systems that police young people. Because like for many of us, if you work with young people, like we're mandated reporters and we work within these systems, and these systems are what they train us to use as supports. So as we like continue to move away from policing young women's bodies, something I want to be conscious of is like how to steer away from these systems and stuff.
That's right. And so that's the last word that we're going to have from the audience. I just want to name one thing. I mean, these organizers need to know we need a girls' track. Any conference you do, clearly know that these issues that have come up, we need to talk about, dismantle, and digest and deconstruct for hours, right? And we need more space like that. So I thank you for creating this space here and getting started. These panelists are going to be here. Do we want to say just real quick how folks can get in contact with you, starting with Cedra?
Yeah, folks can get in contact with me by giving me a call. I do answer phone calls. 212-283-7044. And 212-283-7044. And that's the Brosis phone number. I've been there for 16 years. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, so that is the number to reach me, trust me. And email C as in Cedra, M as in Maria, S as in Sebastien, at brotherhood-sistersoul.org. I'm on the little birdie at Cedra Maria, so you can reach me there as well.
All right, one contact.
You didn't say that, Joanne. I would have followed directions.
Wait. Since he already said the Brosis information, social media would be SOYMILCK. I'm pretty active, so hit me up there. Any questions? And yeah.
So you guys can, Facebook is my most active platform. You can always Facebook me, MIAIJA, last name JAWARA. And also follow me on Instagram, brown.tings. Yes, mind your business.
I guess Facebook would be the most accurate way to remain in contact with me. And it's Octavia Y. Lewis, MPA.
Okay, see, this is how you see it get into generational. GGENYC.org website. I love y'all so much. What y'all learned today, you can't unlearn, right? And so, as this title says, Invisible No More, Policing of Girls of Color, know that you can play a role in interrupting. And thank y'all so much. Thank you.